Hi, Jim here, just dropping in before this week's episode to tell you about my latest movie, The Apocalypse Box. It's a horror film and I'd love for you to check it out. If you go to apocalypsebox.co.uk, you can find all the links on where you can watch the movie. Right, let's get on with this week's episode. Hi, Jim here, and you're listening to the Honest Filmmaker podcast, career advice from people in the business. This week, I'm speaking to filmmakers Lorissa and C.J. Julianus. Husband and wife team Lorissa and C.J. have released their feature film, The Misadventures of Mistress Maneater. Lorissa wrote the script and stars in the lead role, and C.J. directed the film. I talked to them about some of the challenges of releasing the film. It's a very unique romantic comedy that has potentially been misconceived as other things when it's been released. You'll find out about that when we have our chat. We also talked about sales and distribution process, some of the challenges they faced because the film was hard to categorize. We talked about how it was to actually shoot the movie. Lorissa talked about what it's like editing. She edited the movie, editing her own performance as an actor. And also CJ gave me some advice for new directors on how to direct actors in a micro and low budget feature film. We also spoke about marketing and PR, and we spoke about piracy and some techniques to get versions of your film that are out there taken down. Enjoy. So I tell you what, let's start with Lorissa. Tell me your route into filmmaking.
Oh, Jim, I have adored films ever since I was a kid. I'm sure most of us have. Otherwise, we'd never go into the industry, right? But it's been part of my family tradition. My grandmother grew up in the Depression, and what she loved more than anything was getting a coin or two from her from her father, my great-grandfather, just to be able to go see the movies, her one little indulgence. And growing up every night, my mom would be putting on a movie and we'd have all the VHS tapes. And I just thought that's how everybody lived. I thought everybody lived to watch movies in the evening. So it was a dream of mine to be able to write them. From a very young age, I was submitting scripts and getting odd phone calls from production companies going, why do you have a parental release submitted with your script? I'm like, well, I'm trying to do this the right way. I'm only 13. And they're like, you're what? So I ended up majoring in screenwriting. I went to Columbia College, Chicago. I'm born and raised in the Chicago area. And through a very circuitous route, always tried to stay in the film industry as much as possible, whether it was as a performer, behind the scenes, doing various things.
Right, okay. What about you, CJ?
Well, I don't even know where to start with my so when I was young, my mom and dad, they started a theater company at our church to raise funds. They do a yearly play, and if they needed a juvenile delinquent, I got typecast.
Love it.
So that started that. Then I went into the military, and I was in the service for a long time, and I left all that behind. But while I was in the service, I was actually discovered by a talent agent. And I was in the Navy at the time, and I was stationed in Miami, Florida, of all places. And Pan Am Airlines was looking for a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, boy next door looking guy. Everybody in Miami is from Cuba. So, it was not, they were not blonde hair and blue eyes. So I ended up getting cast in my very first commercial, which was great. And then many years later, I moved back to Chicago, and everything culminated with me starting a theater company that did very, very well. That's where I met Lorissa. And I was directing and producing live theater, which making movies is a natural extension of that. Although doing theater is a lot more satisfying and a lot less expensive.
Tell me about it, yeah. Lovely. And then the film you've got out, the one that I've recently watched, The Misadventures of Mistress Maneater.
You said it right the first time.
That's because I've got it written down. I didn't want to mess it up. I've got it written down in front of me. So Lorissa, what's the pitch for that? Give me the synopsis.
Oh, Lord, I've never been good at the elevator pitch for that one.
There's not an elevator pitch for this film because it's so dense, right?
Well, it's a romantic comedy unlike anything you've seen. So two very unlikely characters, a art historian who has to make ends meet as a dominatrix, has an offer of, hey, this dangerous debt that you have to pay off in 30 days or else hey, all you need is some naughty photos with this gentleman in this small town. Well, this gentleman turns out to be an Episcopal priest who wants absolutely nothing to do with her, but he also raises money for his church by being an MMA fighter at night. So secrets are revealed, and there's a Renaissance, not a Renaissance, a Baroque painting at the center of a mystery. My inspiration was season 2, episode 1 of the BBC show Sherlock.
Interesting. I'll have to revisit that one. Because what struck me about it was when CJ sent it through to me, I saw the picture. I was like, I know what this is. I know exactly what this is, because I saw the front poster and I was like, this is going to be some sort of slightly titillating. Do you know what I mean? It's going to be a certain type of movie, but it's not at all. The fact that it's a romantic comedy surprised me, and it's not graphic or offensive at all. So in fact, it's quite gentle. Was that decision to write that on purpose? Did you have any thoughts about where it was going to go when it was finished, or did it just kind of evolve that way?
I'd say that it was definitely one of the most challenging aspects of the marketing was realizing what expectations were and trying to find the right tone of marketing to fit that, because there aren't a lot of edgy rom-coms, or I find that rom-coms that dip into other genres, but also, like you said, stay very clean and PG-13. And that's why I was inspired by a lot of the, PBS BBC television shows that I do see, and those productions, because it's like, oh, we can be this daring. We can actually bring this to, a public broadcasting station.
You can bring it to the edge, but not go all the way over. And what's interesting is when Lorissa first started this whole process up, it started off as a script that was it was like 1 acre pond that was 1 foot deep. It wasn't
fluffy.
It was, yeah.
Like most rom-coms are.
Yeah. So yeah, most rom-coms are very predictable. I mean, you think rom-com, you think Hallmark, and they're all basically the same kind of story. And then she turned it into a novel at the suggestion of another filmmaker friend of ours who thought, if this was a novel series, you might have a better chance of getting funding. And the novel was naughty. But then after she wrote the novel and really fleshed out the character, she went back to the script and she made the script that we made the movie from. And so as a theater producer and director, whenever I produce theater, I'm reading probably a couple dozen scripts to figure out what I want to do and if it's worth spending my time to do it. Well, when I read Lorissa's script, I had in my mind, this is brilliant. Lorissa is brilliant. The script was brilliant. It was funny. I laughed out loud with it when I read it, and I got immediately in my mind that we're making this movie. And because the script was that good, sometimes and you know this, Jim, you make movies and things. Sometimes when you read a script, it grabs you. Sometimes you immediately see in your head how shots are going to look, the way it's going to progress, right? Other scripts, you read them and you're like, you feel nothing. But with Lorissa's script, I felt it. So a few months later, I worked as assistant director on a webisode series, and that's where I started working with our director of photography. And in the course of doing that work, I was like, I can work with this guy. And I told him, I said, hey, I've got this script. I really want to turn it into a movie. Would you take a look at it? He's like, yeah. I'll take a look at it. I can't commit to it. I don't know when I'm going to do it. But so that weekend, he calls me up. He goes, I started reading it and I couldn't put it down. I finished it reading it in one sitting. Yes, I will help you make this movie. And so then Lorissa and I, we had to set about deciding how we're gonna pay for it, because making movies is expensive. And
making good movies.
Yeah. There's definitely a race to the bottom when it comes to budgets and quality these days, because it's so incredibly difficult and daunting to make your budget back these days, even if your budget isn't that big. So what Lorissa and I did is we flipped a house, and
right, okay,
yeah. So we took the profits we worked on flipping that house for 6 months. But when we got the money in, it was a substantial amount of money. And I came home and I said, Lorissa, we're making your movie. And Larissa's reaction was what?
We're what? What?
So I told her, I said, you know what, honey, this is a great script, and I don't want to leave it up to somebody else to make and to cut it up and to, to do something with it that we don't want. We want to follow our own artistic vision with this. And we want to use it as a vehicle to hopefully open doors for Lorissa and her talent. And perhaps even our company, Binary Star Pictures, to do more films. And that was the idea going into it. So we spent 9 months on pre-production. We shot for 28 days. It was a 28-day shoot schedule. And then we had about another 8 months of post before we had its formal release. It's a long, expensive, time-consuming process, as you well know. So,
yeah, and it's not easy. And I've had this conversation before, because you get to that end point, you've shot it all, you put it together. First time you look at it, you're like, oh my God, what is this? It doesn't make any sense. Then you mold it and you shape it and you spend all that time on it until you finally get it out there. So did you find the fact that it was kind of on the edge, you didn't cross that line, did that make it, do you think that opened up more sales opportunities and more audiences?
No, the opposite.
The opposite.
Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting.
What frustrated me, because I'm one of those people that I like the edge, I like, we can't fully classify it. And so it's unpredictable because, there's a little bit of this going on. There's a little bit of that. Every genre, as you know, has a very predictable pattern. But when you start to combine them, I feel like, okay, not only is that a greater responsibility on the storyteller and the filmmaker to tie up each of those aspects of the story in a satisfying manner, in a well-crafted manner, because every genre has its own demands, but it also makes it less predictable overall because you have the elements of different genres saying, no, you can go this way. No, you can go this way. There could be a surprise.
Yeah. And there's another aspect to this that we found out. So Lorissa and I, when we watch movies and we know exactly where the movie's going to go from the start, we don't like that. We don't like predictable movies where it's like pretty obvious what it's going to be. And we really endeavored to make this be completely unique. But the issue with that is, and we discovered this doing theater, when you're doing theater, oftentimes the hardest sell is the newer scripts that people don't know anything about. They don't know where it's going to go. So for instance, I directed many, many plays that were new or more obscure or certainly more edgy. One of which was a play called The Last Days of Judas Iscariot. It was written by New York playwright Stephen Adley Girgis, who actually is a pretty busy working actor here in the States as well. And getting that sold to audiences to where they would come and see it, it was a daunting task. Now, if I had done The Odd Couple, I would have been having sold out shows every time. But that is precisely the kind of like the dichotomy that we have as producers. You want to make your budget back, or you want to be able to say you're able to make money with your project, but at the same time, it just seems like if you're looking for a big audience, it seems like it needs to be a little bit more predictable and not on the edge, and that is what it seems that they want.
What we learned from our film agent was that the job that you have in marketing is to set and then fulfill expectations in your audience, and that was the challenge that we faced because, like you said, people see it or the title. I found that when I was pitching it as a novel to at writers' conferences and to agents, you'd give the pitch. I gave a much better pitch then, believe me. I practiced them. And, you'd have that person be like, that's hilarious. I want to see that, or I want to read that. That's exactly what I want, because they understood what it was trying to do. And that was, something they hadn't seen and something they'd been looking for. But by and large, you would get okay, so it's really naughty? No. Oh, so it's super clean and safe and grandma like it. Well, maybe not. So it seemed that when it came to marketing, that was the biggest challenge, is trying to push the edges of the predictable. Yeah. People want it. It seemed that in the marketing world, people really want to be able to see a little thumbnail and know exactly what it is and be able to get exactly what they're expecting. So that was our biggest challenge that we faced.
Well, one of the things that we did find, and I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, carry on.
Lorissa found, especially when pitching to agents, was like, okay, I can pitch a novel with a dominatrix, and I can pitch a novel with a mixed martial arts fighting priest, but I cannot pitch a script that has a dominatrix and a priest. So to us, it was just like, no, what we're trying to do is we're trying to take rom-coms have a formula, like Lorissa said. Movies have set tropes that a lot of times you have to fulfill. But the neat thing with rom-coms is they have to meet at the beginning. It's either a meet cute or a meet ugly. Like in our movie, it's a meet ugly. And then at the end of the movie, they have to wind up together. Those are the two things that you have to accomplish in a rom-com. But anything can happen in between. So that's why the idea of having really disparate characters appealed to us, because we've never seen those characters before.
And there's a lot more at stake. And as you know, as a filmmaker, the more you can raise the stakes, the harder your protagonists have to fight to achieve their goals, and the more your audience is going to be going, how can they do it? How is it even possible?
So a lot of rom-coms, the big high stakes is the wedding going to happen? And our movie is she going to get killed? We're not paying back a debt to her former boyfriend, Russian mobster.
But we do feel fortunate that even though it has been harder for us to get, this huge commercial audience, that the people who have found it and discovered it, so many people are very passionate about it. So that in many ways has been the payment, so to speak.
Yeah. So the monetary payment, and you know this, Jim, what's happening with streaming. And, when we first were considering making this movie, Amazon was paying like a dime or something like that per view or something like that. Then it went down to a nickel. Then it went down to 2.5 cents. Now, when you watch my movie on Prime, you watch the whole movie, we get paid 1 penny. And from that 1 penny, I pay my distributor 20%. So I don't even make a penny if you watch my whole movie. And that's the direction that the independent movie business has gone into.
As you know, what all of the BFI reports that have been coming out over the last couple of years in Britain.
Yeah, it's just it's an industry that needs to be respected and supported, and artists like us. And we watched your movie, the
Apocalypse Box. We loved it. Was fantastic.
And you did a wonderful job on
it. And I have to tell you, I do not like horror movies. And I was like, this was good. This kept me watching.
Well, you guys can come on again if you're going to say
it was so well made. And I was like, wow, you did a lot with, limited locations. And, because I had way too many locations.
But we understand the challenge of that. But the real challenge these days is that, yes, we're passionate filmmakers, we're passionate artists. We earn a lot of our living in the arts doing live entertainment and live type stuff that pays us. We make more in one afternoon doing that than we do in an entire quarter of getting a penny at a time.
It's supply and demand right now in the audience. But what were you going to say, Jim?
I was going to say, I wonder, you were talking about it being a project that was hard to define, or maybe hard for the audience to understand. But then part of me wonders whether it's the audience or the layer of sales and distributors who can't categorize it very easily, maybe. And obviously the challenge is always going to be you reaching the audience, but a lot of those, I'd say middle level sales agents and distributors, they sort of want something a bit cookie cutter that they can just chuck into different categories and know they don't have to work hard to sell it. I guess that brought me onto the question of PR marketing. How did you approach that with the film?
Well, as far as things that we wish we knew, we wish that we knew that these days it's probably more important to have twice the marketing budget as the production budget that you have, because you're screaming into the void. There's so many films out there. How do you set yours apart? And when we were speaking to interested distributors, it's just like you said, we were told, oh yeah, we do great with dominatrix movies. And it's like, no, it's not a dominatrix movie. She doesn't want to be a dominatrix.
Then we had another distributor say, oh, you guys made a neat little horror movie. It's not a horror movie.
That's when I decided, okay, I have to redesign the poster and take out the black background. It has to be a light background. I learned, I wanted to break free from those tropes, but I realized, no, they actually serve you. The design and art direction tropes, they serve you as a filmmaker, because this font and these colors tell people what genre you are. It's become, especially in romantic comedies and in so many genres, that's the only way for them to immediately know what it is when they're scrolling through. So he was like, okay, now I have to follow the rules. But titling was tough. So I think one of my biggest pieces of advice would be start with a really, really, really great title.
Yeah, so that's interesting. You brought up titles. So
we went back and forth.
We worked on that title probably for 3-4 years.
We always came back to it, and we're like, there's nothing really that's better.
It was hard to come up with a title that kind of encapsulated what we were trying to accomplish,
but also was compelling.
But was, our film agent is a guy named Jeff Dowd, and Jeff Dowd is an interesting guy. He is the person who the dude in The Big Lebowski was based on. He's an actual real person, and he was our film agent. And he told us, he said, I love your movie. I don't like your title.
Whereas his partner loved our title.
Yeah, his partner loved our title. And he said, you need to come up with a new title. So what I did, because Lorissa and I, we went through this for 3 years. I put out to all of my circle of friends on Facebook, okay, you've seen my movie. We're considering retitling. Please let us know what you think a good title for this would be. And if we pick it, we'll buy you the best steak dinner you ever had in your life. So we got all these suggestions back, and they were all terrible. The best one was Beauty and the Priest.
Which, of course, then people think sounds like a porn movie. Right? That was a challenge we faced that we didn't think of. Like when I heard of Misadventures of Mistress Maneater, to me, having someone who, likes romance novels, I thought, oh, that sounds cute and fun and a little cheeky. But to other people, it's like, oh, that sounds like a porn title. And it never even occurred to us that's what people would think.
Now, here's another thing that we brought up. We brought up the word porn. So when we released our movie, this is also something that we did not know. So this is really important for aspiring filmmakers. The week our film was released, it was hacked by 800 internet pirate companies.
Did you have the same issue with yours, Jim?
We had as soon as I'm trying to think which platform it was, but we noticed immediately it popped up. It was like the next day it just popped up, and it's
everywhere.
So frustrating, especially when it's near your initial release date and you're really excited about getting out there and sharing it, and then you see these sites appear. It's just heartbreaking.
It was not just heartbreaking, it was absolutely maddening, because I viewed them at that time. We were doing Amazon where you had to pay per view. It was a pay-per-view type thing, and we were selling our movie for like $2.99 or $4.99. It's something really small. We just felt like, you know what, for $4.99, that's a lot less than going to the movie theater. Let's price it there. Well, we viewed that these 800 companies were stealing money from our pockets. So luckily I had a few experienced filmmaker mentors, and one of my mentors was from Hollywood. He was a film critic for Reuters, many years, film critic for Reuters, and he had a film out called Crazy Bitches, and derivative title, right? And so it did well. So he decided, well, I'm going to make a sequel. Guess what that was called?
Crazy Bitches 2, maybe?
Yes! Well done,
have gone for, I think, maybe.
And, but it was pirated like right away. And so he told me about a takedown service and that he used called Muso, M-U-S-O. And that's actually based in Great Britain. Are you familiar with them?
I'm not, no, actually. I'll have to look into that. Muso.
So Muso, M-U-S-O. And they did a wonderful job. So I signed a 1-year contract for them to be a takedown service. But I had a lot of skin in that game, because what I had to do is I had to go and Google my film title and every company that was showing my film for free. I had to report it to Muso, and then they would take care of it from there. So I would say for the first few months, every week I would spend probably 5-6 hours just scouring the internet for pirate sites and reporting them to Muso.
And unfortunately, because of the title and the imagery, a lot of the places they were pirated were on porn sites, which
Right.
then ended up disappointing all the visitors to those porn sites. And then
Yeah, they got a romantic comedy.
We got hammered. So
we got terrible reviews saying there's no nudity, there's no sex scenes. How dare they?
Exactly. So like what you were facing, Jim, with your film, where you're getting this influx of really like, where did these bad reviews come from? I mean, did I make Citizen Kane? No. But did I make a 1-star film? No. But the thing is like the thing that maddened me the most when I was doing the takedowns is that one of the sites I went to was a pirated porn site. It was either Chinese or Japanese. And my trailer for my film was right next to another trailer for a porn film where the girl was being really defiled. And I was so angry. After a year of my contract with Muso, over 2,000 pirate sites were taken down by them. And there were some sites that we couldn't because they didn't abide by U.S. law, places like Iran and where they've got a lot of that pirating going on. So I viewed it as these people are stealing my content and taking credit for it. I can't let that happen. And that's why I contracted with them. They were expensive too.
But I also learned a lot as a writer and an editor. It's like, wow, I didn't anticipate this being an issue. If I did a film in the future, it would either be an R or a PG, not a PG-13.
Nothing in between. Exactly.
Make it very clear.
Yeah. That is a tough one. So I've not used Muso. All I've been able to do is get things delisted off of Google. So filling in a form, getting sites delisted, because I guess I figured at the time, unfortunately these sites they're always going to be there. So that all you can do really is to get them taken off of search. So your average person who searches won't, a pirate one won't pop up. It'll be the actual one. But getting it on porn sites, that's a different kettle of fish altogether.
And that's where a lot of the bad reviews came from. Like Lorissa said, they were expecting, flesh. They were expecting action. Like they were expecting porn action. And, they just gave us 1-star reviews saying that, we misrepresented or whatever. And we didn't.
Because we didn't ever posted it to a porn site.
Yeah, it's the 1-star review thing is a bit of a epidemic at the moment, and I guess the message I would say to people is, if you watch an independent film, review it. Even if you don't review it, you just give it a star rating, what you actually thought of it. It really does help the movie. For that little action has a big effect on it. So I'm making the assumption here, are you guys married, or what's your...
Oh yes.
Oh yeah, for 20 years.
Yeah, I thought I better check. I didn't want to assume. My wife is my producing partner, obviously, and I often ask people, because you do find a lot of couples in the industry, how does it work for you guys, and does it always work? Are there any on-set arguments that you bring home? How do you deal with it?
Well, I actually have never felt closer to CJ than when we were working on this movie, because it was truly our baby. It was truly our creation together. And the fact that, day in and day out, we were both focused on this, both working toward a common goal. I mean, I would have dreams at night of us being on a journey together side by side. And I always felt safer and more secure. And it was much more fun knowing I had CJ at my side.
Yeah, I think we had one little dust up one night where, Lorissa was very concerned. It was a car scene. It was the car scene where he jumps through the window and they drive off. I'm sure you remember that. And we had a little misunderstanding, but at the end of the night, it was fine.
It was just, one sentence, then like, okay, fine.
But, the thing is like, Lorissa is my best friend that I've ever had. We've been together for 20 years. We've never really had a fight. We disagree on things. But I think when you have a really great relationship with somebody, that really colors everything you do anyway. And
fortunately, there was really no ego between us in creating this. It was just hard work.
Yeah, we were always the first one doing things, and we were always the last person doing. Nobody worked harder than
And
us
both of
making
us
this.
did so many different things. So that got very stressful. But we also were able to take over the positions that were best suited to us. I'm much more introverted. And so when it came to, hey, if I got the hardest thing I think I did in pre-production was building the schedule, which, as you know, can be, for us at least, it was very difficult with, I don't know, 40 locations, 40 speaking
Bringing people from
roles.
California,
Yeah, and but yeah, so many locations, so many speaking roles, and having to rent a Tesla for certain scenes, and that was only because Nikola Tesla was Serbian. Okay, for our audience.
Now that we know more about Elon, we're like, we probably wouldn't use it.
Yeah, there's a few things I would have changed about the writing, going what I know now. But CJ took care of so much of the calling people up and, hey, let me talk to you about what we're doing. Can we shoot at your location?
Yeah.
I would have found that a lot more stressful than just me and a computer, nobody around. So and for me, I absolutely loved editing more than anything else. So I could be in front of my computer for 12 hours straight,
And you were
doing the minutia of, oh no, this music is one frame off from where I need it, whereas that would have driven CJ nuts.
It would have, yeah, because so we have a very yin yang thing. So her strengths are my weaknesses, and vice versa. So we really pick each other up that way. And I'm sure you're the same way with your wife, So.
But yeah, when 20 people all have, I always say, like, directing a large group of people is like driving a bus full of first graders and they all have to pee. So on set, I was so glad CJ was the director that everyone could come to with, what about this? And, oh, I need that. And blah, blah. That would have been a little too much for me to handle.
The only night that I actually almost got close to chewing somebody out, which I never did. I want people to come to my sets and feel comfortable and welcome and whatever. But the big fight scene.
Oh, that was a rough night.
At the end of our movie, we scheduled the fight scene to be the very last day of shooting, because if there was an injury to our main characters and we had shot that up front, we could have lost our whole shooting schedule. So we decided to do all of the fight scenes at the very, very end, and we shot we
had like 80 extras. It was 95 degrees.
No air conditioning, very dusty air. It was so, I'm trying to get all of these fight scenes done in one day, when that was the only day we had all of our extras.
And we had a skeleton crew, so very, very few people.
It was really hard, and I had an extra coming up to me telling me how I should shoot these fight scenes when we'd rehearsed them.
Random extra
for 3 weeks beforehand, so we could shoot them efficiently. And this random extra is coming up to me telling me, "Oh, you really ought to do this." And I looked at him like, "If you don't get away from me right now,"
So they say the extras don't approach the director.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah. So, but it was.
And what I loved was that, since we didn't have a scripty, and I kind of ended up being the scripty because I was going to edit it. So I had created the shot list and understood what I absolutely needed as the editor for coverage. And of course, my big elaborate shot list goes completely out the window, as you might have experienced some nights too, when you're just racing against the clock. And so CJ be coming to me and going, okay, we got this. What else do we need? And I was so glad that you did that.
I always did that because there may have been a pickup shot that we needed to get in there to segue from one scene to the next. Having the editor as your lead actor and as your writer really kind of made things better for us.
Because I was able to say, okay, we got my coverage, we got his coverage, we still need the wide shot. Or we got the wide shot, we got mine. I need his coverage. Otherwise, I cannot cut this together. And when I knew as we were shooting it, we didn't get that shot. We're going to have to come back for it. But I also knew it was only me in the shot. No audio was needed. We were able to do some pickups that were just me. No sound people were needed. Me, the makeup artist, the shooter, and that was it. So that was helpful too.
We only had one day of pickups.
Yeah.
We shot so efficiently and so well that
after I cut together the assembly,
there was just a couple of like B shots, transitory shots that we had to go get, and it worked out really, really well.
Yeah, it's nice. I guess from our side, it's so nice having somebody else who knows the film inside out like you.
Yes.
And like you say, can pick up and go, "Oh, we haven't done this," or "They're wearing the wrong hat in this sequence or something ridiculous.
Yes,
So yeah,
exactly.
having that person there who knows it as well as you. And to your other point, something I always say to students, because I've had that very situation where you get somebody, I've had someone trying to offer a professional sound man advice on how to hold his boom, that kind of stuff. It can make your skin crawl a little bit, and it is for mainly to students. You've really got to read the room
Yeah.
and remember, if you're new on a set, you're kind of the green person. You need to sort of keep quiet and learn rather than trying to put yourself out there too much.
Right.
Um, so what was I going to ask you was acting and directing. So I'll take them one by one. I'll start with you on this one, CJ. So if you're about to go into your first debut feature film, what is the most important things you should know about directing actors?
Oh, what? Gosh, that is such an all-encompassing question. So when I cut my teeth as a theater director, and my theater productions always were very high quality. My theater company was actually named by Money Magazine as one of the reasons the town we lived in was so great. So really, really proud of that. But when I was directing, I always told my actors, if you trust me, you will be your best. But you need to trust me. I am the surrogate audience, and I am here to make a story the best it can be. And if you're going to be on the screen or you're going to be on the stage in front of people, I will make you the very best that you can be if you will listen to me and take my direction. A lot of actors are egotistical and they think they know better, or they think that they have a better way or whatever. And I try to establish right away that, no, I'm on your side. And I am not going to talk just to hear myself speak. If I see something that needs to be done or something needs to be worked on, we're going to work on it and we're going to get it right before we move on. And when you can get those actors on board with that philosophy, they will walk through a wall for you. The other thing is in your casting is that you really have to be cognizant of, you're going to be working with these people for the long term. You've got to like them and they have to like you, and they have to be team players. So if you let one rotten apple into the whole cast, it's going to ruin everybody's attitude. And Lorissa and I both, we did our best to create an atmosphere on set where people felt important and that they were part of something bigger than themselves. And I pledged to everybody when we started that Lorissa and I, we had the skills to do it. It was our first feature film, but it was not our first production. We know what needs to be done. And if they trust us, we're gonna make sure that what the end product is going to be is something that they can be really proud of. And that made a huge difference.
Trust is very important.
Yeah. So the other thing is we had a budget where we paid our actors. A lot of independent films, actors are the last ones to get paid, and we had we didn't have a lot of money, but we had enough money. I wish I could have added a zero behind everybody's paycheck, frankly, but just the mere fact that we were offering paychecks, and we were even offering stipends to some of our people, that weren't necessarily SAG actors, but they were busy independent film actors. We found ways to put money in their pocket, because even that little bit makes people feel like their talent is respected or their time is respected. So that also can go a long way in helping get cooperation from the people that are involved with you. You have anything you added that? No? Okay.
So then let's turn that on its head. So acting, lead role, feature film. If you're talking to actors, what any advice for them?
Well, my co-star Shannon Brown gave me a wonderful piece of advice. He said, halfway through shoot, you are going to have a breakdown.
Nice.
And sure enough, on day 12, I can recall, I think we were in the bathroom and Craig was taking a shower, and I'm just, because it just got, being the producer and the writer and and doing all the things, I had just gotten too much to me. And I was like, this is what Shannon was talking about. I'm not alone.
Every day on set, it felt like we were Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill.
So that was a big help to realize, this is the way it's supposed to be. This is hard. This can be exhausting. And, once I realized, I was like, okay, I'm better now. This is not a foreign feeling. It's always a struggle, I think, as an actor shooting out of sequence. And especially if you're used to theater, where you have, whatever is music.
Everything's linear.
Yeah, and everything is going on around you as part of the emotional flow. But instead, you have to create the emotional flow because you're trying to cry, have a crying emotional scene, and you can hear the chatter of various people on the street. They're shooting a movie over there while you're trying to have this emotional moment. The advice I'd give to actors is I felt that one of the things I learned the most was in the editing process. Even simple things like you cannot blink. And the reason you don't blink is not just connection, but because the editor cannot cut on a blink. And that is never told to people when they're being trained as an actor, why you don't blink. All the technical reasons. I think every actor at a certain point needs to edit themselves and edit their own performances to understand how to give the best performance in the future and what the director and the editor are actually seeing. Beats were very important to me, studying the script ahead of time, understanding the flow, the beginning, middle, and the end of each scene emotionally, the journey you would go on. Also writing out the backstory. I was very fortunate that I knew this story and this line inside, or in these lines inside now.
Yeah, you read the script.
Yeah, it had been with me for 5 years, and I had written a novel about it. But to actors who don't have that, it's a stranger's words. I have found that for me personally, what helps me the most to instinctively have that inner journey and that inner life and those thoughts going on while I'm saying the words, having all the subtext that you need, is writing out the entire backstory of the character.
Yeah.
Even if you're guessing in the case of auditions, it gives you your words extra, something more than just the surface level. And it gives you a sense of connection and ownership and authorship. So I personally find that to be very important.
Yeah, Matthew McConaughey, when he did True Crime for HBO, he did a 200-page Bible of his character. 200 pages of just going through and doing that kind of thing. So yeah, that is really, really important to understand, to basically put down a foundation of what your character is rooted in, and that way you can pull emotions from it.
And memorization we had an issue with a couple actors, who weren't fully memorized, which definitely slowed down production.
You got to show up on set with the lines memorized.
And these were people who, weren't necessarily carrying the film. But also for auditions, I took note of the people who, when they had to say different foreign cities, foreign words, they looked up the pronunciation. That meant a lot to me. It's like, okay, they went that little extra just for that bit of authenticity. Yeah. Those details matter, especially to the person who penned the words. And also, so you are authentic in the character. So, it seems so basic to those of us who are behind the camera, but I think we all need to be reminded of those things as the actors, because they don't always have a sense of what's going on behind the camera.
Yeah. And I'm sure, as you said, if you're sat there editing it, those beats within a performance, like you say, they're so important. I've worked with Corinne, who was my lead. She played the Prime Minister's wife in the Apocalypse Box. She was also in amazing. She'd done years of soap acting, so she knows where the camera is. You can cut on a move. It'll be the same every single time. It'll be just as good every time she does it, but she'll be in the same position, same eye line, knows where the camera is. It's like a magic trick when you're watching it, because you're just like, oh, thank God, when I get to the edit.
Right. So there was something going on with her performance. I felt that way about all of your performers and actors, and how extremely skilled they were. And I believed all of them. I was there with them, and it really kept me engaged. I feel that that's where a lot of indie filmmakers miss the mark, is they concentrate so much on their production quality, so much on all these aspects that are completely time consuming, but very often they don't necessarily have the high caliber actors that they need. And I find personally, watching the film, I am a little disconnected right away if I can tell that this actor is not necessarily a skilled actor or the best actor for that role. And so it doesn't matter if the sound is incredible and the music is great and the shots
Well,
and the lighting.
It's a movie. Everything has to be right
Yeah.
because it's forever. That's it. So when we did theater's great because everything's in the moment. Even mistakes, that's what the audience comes for, and seeing the actors pick it up and do that. It's part of the charm of live theater is you just don't know what to expect. But with movies are forever. And any mistake that you make is going to be able to be, paused and reviewed and looked at, and people are going to pick it apart. And so, we got to make everything absolutely correct.
Yeah. And also as an actor, you don't have any control over the editing. A good editor can make a not so great performance look a lot better, or it can make a great performance look pretty bad, as you know. And so I think that's another reason why it's a wonderful exercise for an actor to be able to cut their own performance at some point, to have that additional layer of authorship, so they can understand the process and what will be in their control and what will not be in their control.
Right.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you'd like to hear from more industry professionals, how they got into the business and how you can do the same, or you just want to listen to some cool stories from movie sets around the world, then please do subscribe to the Honest Filmmaker podcast.